All right, welcome to the Crowded Room, the first Google Plus Hangout edition, and this is Crowdsourcing.org's weekly podcast where we run down the most popular, innovative, and interesting crowdsourcing and crowdfunding campaigns of the week. This week, Veronica Mars is back, even though some of us didn't know she was there in the first place, and she's back with a rocket ship of a crowdfunding campaign for a new movie. And we're also going to look at how the crowd is being asked to help keep parts of Yellowstone National Park open because Congress can't. And an open innovation campaign to try and put an end to mass atrocities. Plus, is Kickstarter's popularity sagging? One analyst thinks so, and I, for one, will try to explain why I think he's wrong. That's all in this 17th episode of The Crowded Room. I'm your host, Eric Mack, and today in our Google Plus Hangout in The Crowded Room, I'm joined by my fellow editors at Crowdsourcing.org, live from Brooklyn, Eric Blattberg and Anton Root. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing well.
Doing great. So I guess we got the video feed ready to go here, so we can have this will be our first video edition of The Crowded Room, which is
exciting.
Very exciting. We got Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta in the background, and the background, I guess. Is Malaria the cat there?
I think she's in the other room. She's shut out. She'll jump in our laps and be all distracting. She's
right.
helping me type up my Cedars interview, though. Somehow she typed the pi symbol, which was very impressive. I was impressed.
Only a day late. Only 1 day late.
Very nice. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So this Veronica Mars thing, Anton, I think you had forwarded it to me, and actually multiple people had forwarded this to me because this campaign really just blew up. And for those of you who don't know, like myself, because I'm not a huge fan of I don't even know if it's the WB or the CW, one of those networks. Veronica Mars was a TV show. Did we say it was the CW, or was it the WB?
It started on UPN, but I think it was the network eventually became CW. So yes, it was CW essentially.
It's one of those like networks that we just tend not to pay as much attention to, I guess. I'm being snobby. But anyway, Veronica Mars, a TV show from 2004 to 2007, starring Kristen Bell, and had a bit of a cult following apparently. And now there's a crowdfunding campaign to make a movie out of it. And a couple days in already, they've met their goal, $3.3 million at last check before we started broadcasting. And just another example of a Kickstarter campaign taking off. One of you guys wrote about this. Was that you, Anton? What's the deal?
Yeah, it was me. It was a very interesting campaign. This guy Rob Thomas, he's the director, and he's been involved in a lot of sort of cult following type shows like Party Down. I don't know if you guys watched that, but that was pretty funny. I actually really enjoyed that. I've actually never seen Veronica Mars. But I have heard of it, I think, before this campaign. But anyway, it's actually the most successful campaign with that high of a goal. No other project has created the goal to be $2 million and actually was able to meet the goal. And Veronica Mars, this campaign did it in less than, I think it was 10 hours for them to get 2 million, which is really amazing.
Yeah, it's exceptional.
Yeah, for sure. And so essentially what happened was Rob Thomas and Kristen Bell came to Warner Brothers, who still own the Veronica Mars brand and the show, and they said basically, if we are able to prove to you that there is demand for this movie, will you make it? Will you let us make it? And Warner Brothers said, sure, go ahead. And so far, I think it's a pretty resounding success.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another example of this is another example of basically using a crowdfunding campaign to gauge demand, almost as like a focus group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes sense that it's done so exceptionally well. They have star power. They have the backing of Warner Brothers. It's the first Kickstarter campaign with the backing of such a massive movie studio, even though film is the most popular category on Kickstarter in terms of sheer number of projects. I don't think there has been like a Lionsgate or a Sony Pictures or Warner Brothers film up until now.
Right.
Do you know if they're helping out with the marketing at all, or did they just kind of leave it up to Thomas and fans?
Well, it's hard to say. The thing is, I'm not really sure. I don't think anybody really knows what Warner Brothers plans to do in terms of actually funding the film, because even if they raise $10 million and maybe beat Pebble Watch, which which would be hard, but it's possible, certainly after this great start. But $10 million is still not a lot to make and then market a movie. So I mean, I think for this, obviously with the Kickstarter campaign and considering how much publicity it's gotten, I think the marketing costs will be lower anyway. And I think this is like a very cult following type movie, or it would be. So I think the people who really care about it, the people who the 50,000 backers that the campaign has so far, I don't think they need to be really reached in terms of any marketing campaign. But yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what exactly Warner Brothers does with this and how much money they're willing to put into this project. I hope we find out sooner rather than later.
This is pretty interesting because it comes right off the heels of the first crowd-funded picture winning an Academy Award, actually winning one of the smaller, I believe it was a foreign film. And so that's more momentum for the film category in crowdfunding, it seems. Although it's pretty interesting to have the studio involved, because normally you could just give away copies or tickets, and clearly the studio is still going to want to sell tickets. Some funders get a digital copy, which I suppose is just about as good. But it's an interesting balancing act of trying to make money the traditional way while also doing a crowdfunded raise for a project like this. So yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. And Eric Blackberg, you had also brought to our attention, yet another rocket ship of a game crowdfunding campaign, the Torment Tides of Numenera. Did I say that right?
I think so. It's a project by In Exile Entertainment, who is pretty experienced as far as crowdfunding goes. They crowdfunded a game that hasn't even come out yet, Wasteland 2. But they're working hard on it, and they're done with pre-production. They didn't want to rest on their laurels, and they decided to get going on this new game. It's Torment, Tides of Numenera. It's kind of a spiritual successor to an older role-playing game called Planescape Torment. I haven't personally played it, but I've heard very good things. And In Exile, they had worked with a lot of major publishers before they really stumbled upon crowdfunding and found that it suited their development style and needs much better than working with a publisher who demanded certain things out of a project. And they, even if they said, well, we know that our fans have been clamoring for this, publishers would just say, oh, look at the sales figures, you're not making this kind of a game. But they're going to Kickstarter and the fans directly and saying, we want to make this, we know people want it. And clearly they do. It's, you can see right here on the screen, it's raised $2.6 million so far. It still has about 3 weeks to go. And people seem pretty excited about it.
What's going on in that video? I haven't watched the video, and it does not look like a gaming pitch.
This is the studio chief, Brian Fargo, explaining to the CEO of Metric Driven Games, which is a not real thing. It's probably his son or something. But it's basically, he's more or less saying what I've just said. Well, we can promise you the fans want this, and he's disagreeing.
I like the cowboy boots.
Yeah. Brian Fargo is a pretty respected game designer and developer, and I'm pretty excited for this project. It should be pretty good. They've started pre-production, and they have all these stretch goals. They're gamifying it very well, and getting people to really help market it. The initial goal was 900,000, but at 2 million, they're getting a live orchestra, and 1.5, they have all these promises of the deeper gameplay, more voice acting, more character development, what have you.
It continues to be amazing just how mature like the gaming sector of crowdfunding is. I was at South by Southwest in Austin this past week, and I went to a keynote with Julie Ehrman, who's the founder of Ouya, which is, of course, is one of the most successful Kickstarter projects. And with Ouya in particular, and I have no idea if this game is planning to be available on that platform, but there's almost like a built-in platform now for these crowd-funded games to have a place to live on once they're completed. I mean, some of the other Kickstarter games that have been really successful are already going to be on Ouya, and there's really like a pretty robust ecosystem for all things involving crowdfunding and gaming to kind of live off of each other. And more than anything else that we've seen so far come out of crowdfunding, gaming is really leading the way.
Right. Like I said before on an earlier podcast, I think it just makes a lot of sense. Crowdfunding and games as kind of two disparate industries that work very symbiotically together. You have kind of a digital product. You don't need to manufacture it. You don't need like we talked about on an earlier podcast, you don't need to make that thing to come make 1 million t-shirts. Most of what you're giving away is a copy of the game, and that's just bits of code that can be replicated. That's not to say that crowdfunding a game isn't a risky venture. As a kind of amateur game designer myself, I understand that it's a very, very difficult undertaking. You might think something will take 3-4 weeks, it ends up taking a lot longer. But these guys are pros. They know how to budget very well, and they're doing their best. And I hope they are successful. And I'm sure they'll make a great game. They're a reputable studio with a lot of good projects in their past.
Right. Yeah, I agree with your take on all of that. And one thing, we've seen so much success with crowdfunding in some sectors that I think it's like you said, it makes sense for gaming, and now it's even starting to spill over into places where you might argue that it makes less sense, like government, for example, which I think is already supposed to be crowdfunded. But and what I'm talking about is something that we came across this morning, which is there's apparently a plan in the works from some of the folks that support Yellowstone National Park. They've had some problems thanks to the sequester. And if you don't know what the sequester is, I refuse to explain it. Just go turn on CNN. It's the most frustrating thing in the world. But basically it has to do with government cuts of federal programs. That includes national parks. And so Yellowstone apparently hasn't had enough money to be able to plow the roads up in the park and get things open and running for the spring season. And so they're apparently now floating the idea of crowdsourcing those funds. I mean, we haven't heard any more details than that. They're apparently planning to crowdsource funds online. Those are the words from the report that we read. No idea if that'll be on Indiegogo or on some maybe white label platform, or if we're just going to turn the entire Department of the Interior into a crowdfunding platform. I have no idea. We might be better off at this point. What do you guys think of this?
Brian Williams at NBC.
Well, no, I think it's a good move. It's not Yellowstone itself that's crowdfunding. I think it's the small businesses that are really most affected by closed roads and things like that when the snow comes. So obviously it's good for them, but whether or not it's their responsibility, I think, is the bigger question here.
I don't know if it's a responsibility or not. I think people care about the national parks, and they're going to find a way to keep them going. And
right, well, it shouldn't
it shouldn't have to be that way. Right. I agree. It should be a shared responsibility and part of our social contract. But if our government can't find the necessary funds, then I'm sure people will find a way.
Right, and I think we've seen a lot more of this of kind of the public sector trying to tap into crowdfunding, which again is so ironic. But and actually, I came across some report yesterday that I was planning to write up that documented the largest crowdfund campain ever, and it's not a Kickstarter one. It was. And I haven't verified this yet, but it was actually a one-day campaign in Minnesota to give to social programs in Minnesota. I think it was actually called Give Minnesota was the name of the day, and they used a sort of online crowdfunding platform and raised tens of millions of dollars in one day. So this isn't it was through Razoo actually, and this isn't actually a completely new concept to folks in the public sector, but it is one that's getting more popular. So that'll be interesting to see, moving forward, and particularly given how crippled our government is. It would be kind of interesting to see crowdsourcing fill in for democracy. And kind of along those lines, another thing that we were talking about before the podcast is this piece that we saw that came up. This is from an analyst at see now I'm going to try and do the screen share, and I didn't set it up as well as you guys did, and so now I'm trying. So I have to find it now. Okay, it's from a. Is it there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from an analyst at Next Market Insights, who went through some of Kickstarter's data basically, and makes the case that Kickstarter and by extension the crowdfunding market are slowing down. And so some of the figures that he looks at are total Kickstarter projects launched. We've also got the total Kickstarter projects month over month. What were some of the other things here that you looked at? And those are the basic stats that he's looking at. But there's a really key thing here that I wanted to read from his blog post going over his data. And there's several points we make about this, but I'll start here. So Kickstarter's data, in my opinion, the company's data is a legitimate barometer of the overall crowdfunding market. This is, what is this guy's name? This is an analyst at Next Market blog, again writing, and I do not see his byline. Michael Wolf at Next Market blog. So there's a couple problems with that logic and using Kickstarter as a barometer for the overall crowdfunding market. I mean, just because it is the largest doesn't at all make it a barometer for the whole market, because I mean there's one huge problem with that line of thinking, and that's that it's curated. I mean, Kickstarter picks and chooses the projects that can go live on the site. This isn't like Indiegogo, where it's an actual measure of how much interest there is in putting a campaign online, because you can just go and do it. You can't do that with Kickstarter. So if anything, this is a barometer of what the curators at Kickstarter think the size of the crowdfunding market should be. And that's just one of the problems. I have more, but what do you guys think? What's your initial reaction to this?
Yeah, it seems a bit sensationalist to me in the sense that slowing down, it continues to grow year over year, year over year, but also month over month. There are more and more projects every month. So if I pull up his graph here, he says, well, there was a 6.2% growth in July and a 4.1% growth now. And Kickstarter, having just been there the other week and looked at the size of the company compared to the amount of attention it gets and the amount of projects on there, I don't think they have the resources to approve all of those projects. They're getting stricter as they go on. I don't think they're looking for month over month growth in project in amount. They're not, the Kickstarter spokesperson he spoke to hardly seemed concerned.
Well, yeah.
And or maybe it was another blog spoke to that covered this news. But I'm not concerned for Kickstarter, and it's a very specific sector of the industry. It's for creative projects. Obviously, it's large, and a lot of crowdfunding projects are creative projects, but it's by no means synonymous with crowdfunding. There's charitable crowdfunding, crowdfunding for businesses, crowdfunding for equity, and crowdfund lending, which was not examined at all here. This is kind of circumspect analysis, but I would really imagine that it's less that Kickstarter is slowing down than the rest of. I don't know. Well, it's that like more and more projects are appearing in other places on other crowdfunding sites. You know, I just talked to Alex Andon last week, who launched a very successful Kickstarter campaign. I think it was in 2010, creating these jellyfish fish tanks. And you know, for his next crowdfunding campaign, he went to Indiegogo because it was a business. You know, and Kickstarter's tightened its rules, and his new project wouldn't be allowed on Kickstarter,
right?
Following the new guidelines.
And I mean, personally, this is total speculation on my part, but you know, I think if anything, Kickstarter would want other the projects that are less creative and that fit less within their niche. And even though Kickstarter, you know, it's considered to be a big general crowdsourcing platform, I mean, they do have the creative crowdsourcing, you know, sort of niche. So I think for them, it's not really a concern if more projects are going to other platforms and they're just getting, you know, sort of the best projects. But I mean, if this continues, if they eventually start losing projects, then obviously it's going to be a concern. But for now, I mean, slowing down growth from 6% to 4%, I don't think is a huge deal.
So I got a quote from our own crowdfunding analyst, Kevin Berg-Grell, who is a research director for Mass Solution and Crowdsourcing.org, and is working on putting together our crowdfunding industry report right now. We tried to get him to join the Google Plus Hangout, but we couldn't quite bridge the gap between Skype and G Plus, where we normally do this on Skype. So he's been calling on Skype, and we couldn't quite bridge it. But so this is from Kevin Berg-Grell, a.k.a. our Rastafarian Johnny Cash guru of crowdfunding. His words, not mine. So he says, Kickstarter had a historically extreme event with the Pebble Watch, which would have been clear from the data if the sample started before June 2012. And a drop in the number of projects is best explained by a trend toward larger campaigns, i.e. higher funding goals. So there you have it. That's analyst versus analyst. We'll play that game right there. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that this is kind of short-sighted analysis, and I haven't really seen it. We're probably sharing it further and wider than anyone else has. So I call bunk. But moving on, let's see. One other thing we wanted to talk about, we wanted to get some non-crowdfunding stuff into the show, and there's been a lot of pretty cool projects that you've been following, Anton. And one that's particularly interesting is this open innovation campaign to try and reduce mass atrocities, which sounds like really serious stuff. What's that about?
Yeah, it's a really cool project. It's being put on by USAID and Humanity United. So it's Humanity United is a human rights organization, and USAID is obviously one of the departments of the government that funds I think it's mostly foreign projects, but anyway, so they're putting together this open innovation contest. It actually launched back in October 2012, and they had their first two challenges, and they were completed over the last. I guess the winners were announced last week, and at the same time they launched 3 new challenges, and the goal is to reduce atrocities, everything from genocide to rape to poverty, hunger, everything, by essentially tapping into the tech community and trying to find ways to better collect data in order to predict places where genocide and mass atrocities may happen, to create better outlets for communication, everything related to that. And I spoke with one of the guys from Humanity United, who is one of the directors who's involved in this project. And he said the interesting thing about this campaign is that they're going to separate open innovation platforms for each of the challenges. So currently there are, like I said, 3 challenges running, and one of them is on Innocentive, the other one is on Topcoder, and the third one is on this platform called OpenIdeo. And I asked them about why they decided to do that and whether or not there were any, drawbacks or any anything like that. And he said the only tangible, negative thing about running this over 3 campaigns is that it just costs a little bit more because obviously they can't bundle all 3 challenges into one. But aside from that, they went that route just because they wanted to target a specific challenge to a specific platform. So obviously, Top Coder is heavily involved in anything to do with software and big data analysis. So they're using that for the prediction challenge. Essentially trying to figure out where the atrocities are going to happen. So yeah, I think each one is sort of its own challenge. So the deadlines are all different, but they have some great judges. Ethan Zuckerman from I believe he's in MIT, and then Anne-Marie Slaughter. She's a very well-known political analyst. Some other interesting people. So it's a really good challenge, and you can definitely win. $10,000 I think is first place if you win one of the challenges, and you actually have a chance at getting your idea developed by the U.S. government and having it create a sort of tangible result on the ground and helping human rights groups both fight and try to prevent these atrocities.
Yeah, it's a fantastic initiative, and it's a really interesting approach to spread it across the different platforms like that. I think they're looking for diverse communities and trying to tap into the best of each one.
Right.
And I imagine they're going to get really varied outcomes. Maybe
that's one thing. That's one thing that was kind of a topic that came up in multiple unrelated sessions at South by Southwest was kind of the shift in government over the last 5 years to being more open to these kind of open innovation, open source projects, and part of it being a function of just there being more people in the Obama administration than previous administrations that are familiar and proponents of that sort of technology and that sort of campaign, and also actually of the economic downturn. When you can't afford to bring in high-priced consultants anymore, you might as well crowdsource. And I think that's actually has a lot to do with the overall momentum of crowdsourcing across all sectors, and it's good to see it being put to really good use to solve some really important problems. So, and Anton, you've been keeping an eye on quite a few of those, so I'm sure we'll look for more coverage of that kind of stuff on Crowdsourcing.org. Is there anything else we left out this week? I know we're still waiting for the crowdfunding industry report. Kevin and everyone else is at work on those. Anything else that we're working on?
I'm about to put up the final installment of the Cedars interview that I did. Just an interesting look at equity crowdfunding in the UK. It's a more mature market than elsewhere. And I'll have kind of an entrepreneur who worked with them. He used to be an intern for them. And then he went off and started his own company called Swogo that has raised 2 rounds through them now, talking about the benefits and potential drawbacks of going that route, equity crowdfunding.
I had an interesting interview with the owner of Smart Money Entrepreneurs. It's a crowdfunding platform, equity crowdfunding. It hasn't launched yet, obviously, but I haven't really seen any other platforms quite like it. They're they sort of want to help entrepreneurs from the moment they get the idea to try to crowdfund to actually getting it all done. So they do everything with compliance, do all the checks. They have analysts working in-house to sort of grade all the different startup ideas and stuff like that. And they're also going to pair with marketing and PR agencies, so you can get your marketing for cheaper than you would going through just a regular way of approaching a PR firm. So yeah, it's a pretty cool company. They were launching this summer, so I'll have that report typed up sometime in the next couple of days, I guess, after this podcast goes up.
Sounds like kind of a Y Combinator for crowdfunding. That's cool.
Was there anything exciting at South by Southwest related to crowdfunding or crowdsourcing?
There was quite a lot. I mean, Slava Rubin of Indiegogo had a panel that was all just tips for crowdfunding campaigns. A lot of that wouldn't be a surprise to folks that follow our site. There were a couple of panels on crowdfunding. Steve Case was there, former founder of AOL and a real proponent of crowdfunding. He was there with Senator Mark Warner, and they did a panel on the future of crowdfunding. And Steve Case is a big proponent. Mark Warner was kind of hedging a little bit about some of the fraud concerns. But it was you can read our site and get similar takes to that. I actually did put up some video of Steve Case from the event. And let's see what else. There was the keynote. Really, there was several keynotes that involved. Several panels that involved crowdfunding. Matthew Inman of the Oatmeal talked about crowdfunding in his keynote. Julie Ehrman of Ouya had her keynote. Crowdfunding was obviously a big part of that. There's something on that up on our site. So yeah, it was a presence. It was something that people were talking about, and it crept into a lot of panels where it wasn't even part of the stated agenda. And just kind of walking around the showroom floor, Early Shares had a booth, Seed and Spark had a booth, CrowdCheck had a booth, and I hung out, just for a little bit at the Early Shares booth and the CrowdCheck booth, and it was interesting. There were a lot of people coming up and asking a lot of questions. There was a lot of interest, particularly at the Early Shares booth, with people wanting to know more about it. The only thing that surprised me more by the level of interest, because I don't think, these guys were kind of the odd people out on the showroom floor. This is mostly like people showing off like really cool new apps, right? So crowdfunding is a little bit more of an amorphous topic to have a table there, but a lot of interest. A lot of people came up, and yet a lot of people were asking pretty basic questions. Not aware of the Jobs Act. Not aware of really the existence of equity crowdfunding anywhere on the planet. So it's interesting. I would say there's a lot of excitement for crowdfunding that I saw at South by Southwest, but there's also still like a lot of awareness that needs to be built, and that's kind of what I took away from it. So so there are a few write-ups on Crowdsourcing.org that I wrote from Austin. And there's also, you can find information on most of the stories we talked about here today. And as always, you can go on to crowdsourcing.org. And of course, we didn't get a screen share for this one, did we? And there is a orange button towards the top where you can share content. And you can upload a link to your video or your campaign or whatever other project it is that you're working on, and we go through that list of uploaded content, and it's live on the site, and we look at it for possible things to talk about here on the Crowded Room. And I think I have to actually shut up for them to be able to see the site, right?
Yeah. Can you see this? This is a big orange content button right up here.
Well, it turns orange.
It turns orange. It's green. Now it's orange. That's green.
It's pretty amazing.
Pretty advanced technology, if I may say so myself.
So there it is. Yeah. Crowdsourcing.org is the place to find all that stuff, and of course to find the Crowded Room. We're also on iTunes. We're in the BlackBerry Podcast Store and all over the place. So look for us. Give us a review. Share us with your friends. We love all that stuff. And as always, thanks for listening. And we're like kids in a candy store with Google Plus. So thanks for watching or listening to our first Google Plus Hangout. And we'll post it up on the site. And thanks for listening and watching. We'll talk to you next time.
Oh, I'm so mature.